The birth date of Paula Andrea Salazar is September 6, 2009, and 15 in Venezuela. Andrina Bermudos Mirian, her mother, was a native of Machorena, Managas. Tucupatu, a town in the state of Delta Amacuro, was the hometown of her father, Leonardo Salazar. In September 2016, 1 year after Paula's birth, the couple made the decision to move to Ecuador with their young daughter. A month after relocating to Quito, the Ecuadorian capital, they were searching for a better life for their daughter and themselves. The family's relationships declined for several reasons. After deciding to end her relationship with Leonardo, Andrina relocated to Cuenca, the third biggest city in Ecuador. Paula went with her. The girl's best friend's mother lived in Cuenca, and she graciously offered to let the girl and her stay in the house while they looked for another place to live and work. The girl's father, Leonardo, made the decision to move back to his hometown of Tucupatu, Venezuela, following the breakup and other circumstances. After a while, he emigrated once more, this time to Trinidad, Tobago. Leonardo had been crippled for a considerable amount of time at that point. The man had been in a motorcycle accident when he was very young, which left his left arm completely crippled. Even in the capital city of Ecuador, it seemed to be difficult for the man to find a decent job because he was unable to use his left arm. Andrina hardly ever spoke to Leonardo after moving to Cuenca. She only told him once that she had taken a job on a farm in Tapacundo. Andrina started a new romantic relationship with Washington Andreas Amaro a few months after she split up with Leonardo. In addition to being a native Ecuadorian, Andreas also held ownership of the farm where Andrina was employed. The man was raised in an affluent household. Andrina and Paula moved in together with a man when Paula was approximately 1.5 years old. On April 7, 2019, Andreas and Andrina welcomed a child into the world. A newborn brought happiness and unity to the family. However, on March 27, 2020, something happened that completely changed everything. All of the participants' lives were drastically altered. The family was happy and content at the time, and everything was going well on the farm. As joyful as it seemed, Andreas picked Paula up one day and drove her to the flower plantations. The girl became very ill on the way there. She threw up and felt lightheaded. All Andreas could do was make a stop at a public bathroom. Paula puked again as soon as he and the girl stepped inside. Given that the girl's clothes were all filthy, he made the decision to leave her alone for a short while before returning to the car to grab a change of clothes. Paula was found lying with her head in the toilet bowl when Andreas came back. Without delay, the man extracted the girl, attempted to administer first aid, and promptly transported her to the hospital. The 4-year-old girl had shown no signs of life when she was turned over to the medical staff. Physicians declared Paula dead. The doctors on duty discovered there were many contradictions in Andreas's account after doing a preliminary examination and evaluating the girl's condition. For instance, the doctors noticed the girl's facial and body bruises right away, but the details her foster father had given could not have explained their nature. In these situations, medical protocol mandates that physicians call the police. In fact, the circumstances themselves pointed to this. Andreas was taken into custody as a suspect in Paula's murder not long after the police arrived. Despite Andreas's claim that Paula drowned in the toilet bowl, the body's autopsy revealed something far more sinister. First of all, the test results contradict the man's version of events by indicating that the girl had been dead for approximately 24 hours when she was brought to the hospital. Paula received first aid and cardiopulmonary resuscitation, according to the foster father of the girl, and all of this occurred just 20 minutes before he drove her to the hospital. However, the autopsy revealed that the girl died from sepsis, multiple microtraumas, a cracked spine, and multiple broken ribs. Paula's tiny frame bore numerous recent and old injuries, making it clear that her death was not an accident. 3 days after the events of March 30th, Paula's father, Leonardo Salazar, received word of her death. He had received the news of his daughter's passing over the phone from his mother, who remained in Venezuela. She had heard about it from Andreina's friend herself. It should be noted that Andreina cut off contact with Leonardo after he left Ecuador and she entered into a new relationship. For that reason, Leonardo was unaware of her tragedy for 3 days. He had only been able to see her in the photos that Andreina and their mutual friends had sent him up until that point. Furthermore, Andreina stopped Leonardo from interacting with Paula on any social media platform. She also stopped speaking with nearly all of Leonardo's family members. Andreina went so far as to discredit the girl's biological father in front of practically all of their mutual friends by informing them of his lack of interest in keeping in touch with Paula. Leonardo was thus able to find out about his daughter's passing. Andreina's family did, however, let him know about a different cause of death. They informed him that Paula had passed away due to COVID-related complications. Ecuador was under quarantine at the time because of the pandemic, just like the rest of the world. However, at the time, the coronavirus was essentially blameless for 0 deaths in the nation. Undoubtedly highly suspicious that his daughter could have succumbed to COVID, Leonardo started looking up data on the virus's death toll in Ecuador right away. News websites and social media platforms shared the statistics. Among the few people in Ecuador who had fallen victim to the coronavirus, Leonardo saw right away that there were no children. With the assistance of his relatives, Leonardo conducted an investigation. Shortly after, one of them forwarded to him an article from the newspaper mentioning Andreas's arrest on suspicion of Paula's murder. Andreina didn't decide to call Leonardo back until 10 days after he started calling her on a daily basis. During that conversation, Andreina told Leonardo, quite coldly, that Paula had passed away from COVID-19 and that she was not allowed to provide him with any further details as her lawyers had forbidden her from doing so. The next action Leonardo took was to make an Instagram profile called Justice for Paula and a Facebook page dedicated to Paula with a friend. Social media saw a massive backlash in response to the published posts. Their principal objective was to hold those accountable for his daughter's demise. Andreina called Leonardo the same day she went to the morgue to start organizing her daughter's funeral. Although the prosecutor handling the case requested additional time to examine the corpse, the funeral was held on April 10, 2020. Andreina merely refused to consent to the girl's second autopsy. Because of the information shared on social media, Andreina's friends and acquaintances were able to get in touch with Leonardo and inform him of Paula's depressing final years. The information they had, which was mostly based on solitary recordings of conversations, images, audio recordings, and similar items, was forwarded to Leonardo. Witnesses claimed that Paula suffered abuse from both her stepfather and her own mother after her mother moved in with Andreas. Andrea was not only complicit in her daughter's treatment, but she also had a direct hand in it all. Everyone claimed to have only ever seen Paula joyful and content when she was playing by herself. The girl behaved shyly, appeared depressed, and then became extremely afraid in front of her stepfather. The young child once told people that her mother and stepfather had beat her for misbehaving. One day, she even acknowledged that Andreas had pushed her in retaliation, causing her head to hit the wall. Paula was obviously terrified of her stepfather, whom she referred to as nothing less than a monster. The young girl experienced nightmares all the time. She had also experienced insomnia as a young child. When the girl and her stepfather moved into his house, the girl was 2 years old, and at first the couple preferred that she sleep alone. She used to cry a lot when she went to sleep, but nobody ever noticed. Moreover, she was made to tuck in by her mother and stepfather without assistance. Furthermore, since she was 2 years old, Andreina, her mother, has been teaching her how to cook. Something like this was not consistent with the reason. Paula's mother preferred to sleep in the mornings and take an evening break from caring for the baby, so she was forced to prepare her own breakfast and dinner. She was just not interested in caring for her daughter. Furthermore, Andrina did not find it bothersome that the girl must handle the baking oven by herself, even though it poses a risk. The girl's mother had sent her to a preschool, where she frequently complained of back and leg pain and said she was unable to walk. The teacher was forced to present her to the doctors at the health center due to her persistent complaints and the bruises on her body. They found after an investigation that the girl was not receiving proper treatment from her family. In order for the special police unit to look into the girl's abuse in her family, the girl's teachers then called them. After taking up the case, officials chose to send the girl to a secure location while they conducted their investigation. Paula was consequently temporarily moved to her uncle, Andrina's brother, on October 16, 2019. December 4, 2019, has been scheduled for the case's hearing. Sadly, the teachers who were scheduled to testify did not appear. They were unable to attend this hearing, for whatever reason. It was therefore decided to set a retrial date of February 27, 2020. But Paula's teachers just failed to appear, even on this occasion. Paula was returned to her mother precisely 1 month after the court was forced to drop all charges against her parents. On March 27, the girl passed away. Furthermore, it is still unclear why the teachers specifically chose not to attend either of the two hearings. Andrina may have bought the teachers off or just persuaded them that even though the girl had some issues, the parents were not accountable for what their daughter said about them, according to rumors. Andreas was put in protective custody following Paula's passing so that the investigation could continue, but he quickly filed an appeal. Consequently, on June 12, 2020, a hearing was conducted wherein the judge issued a restraining order and decided that the man could be placed under house arrest. However, during the video conference hearing, Andreas declared he was giving up on his appeal. Leonardo was still running a social media campaign at the time. In order to finance his trip from Trinidad and Tobago to Ecuador, he also requested financial support from his subscribers. Before it was too late, he wanted to lodge a complaint against Paula's mother, Andrina. Andrina was free at the time and had not yet been charged. Luckily, Leonardo was able to secure adequate funding and free legal counsel from Osvaldo and Alejandro, two Ecuadorian attorneys who kindly offered him support and aid throughout the lawsuit. Leonardo had to risk his life to cross the border between Trinidad and Venezuela, then travel the whole distance from Naturin to San Cristobal on a raft. Due to the pandemic, all services had been canceled, so he was unable to travel to Ecuador via the regular routes and had to arrange private transfers. Due to the pandemic situation, Venezuela's land and maritime borders were closed, meaning that in the ensuing months, there were very few regular flights to 4 or 5 different countries. After reaching the state of Taquara, Leonardo had to travel through dangerously rough terrain to cross the border into Colombia. After that, he rode a bus to Apaliso and proceeded through the plains and hills until he reached the Rumachig Bridge, which marks the boundary between Ecuador and Colombia. Next, Leonardo got into a taxi and headed to Quito. He had a meeting with an attorney on June 30th. The deceased girl's father lodged a complaint against her ex-girlfriend as soon as he arrived, alleging that she was also a suspect in Paula's murder. After Andreas was charged on July 6, 2020, the woman entered the courtroom and was informed that her house arrest would be adequate and that she would need to report to the police twice a week. Consequently, Andrina and Andreas were both accused of killing someone. According to the Ecuadorian Penal Code, the maximum sentence is roughly 13 years in prison. The case's first hearing took place in November 2020. A precise start date for the trial had not yet been declared at that point. Leonardo's lawyer raised concerns about Andrina's potential escape during the hearing, pointing out that she had tried suicide by taking pills in the past. They also submitted an application to have Andrina fitted with an electronic wristband for monitoring. In addition to granting the lawyer's request, the judge decided to shorten the suspect's court appearance requirement from 2 days to 1 per week. But after a few days, Andrina insisted that the decision about whether or not to wear an electronic bracelet be reevaluated. A second hearing was convened on November 16th to re-examine these rulings. All these details certainly caused a delay in the trial, but at least the judge was able to set a date. December was the scheduled month. Although there was little media coverage of Andreas and Andrina's trial, a lot of information managed to find its way onto social media. However, some of the facts were not reported because the pandemic was a hot topic in the media. On January 14, 2021, the trial got underway. Andreas was being held in the regional detention facility at the time, and Andrina's alternate methods of incarceration were still up for debate. There was no media presence during the trial, which took place behind closed doors. Additionally, a few attendees joined the hearing via a video link. The physician who conducted the girl's autopsy reported that Paula had almost all of her spinal discs replaced and that some of her ribs had already fused. This indicated that the girl had previously suffered a broken rib, which had eventually healed on its own. She also had scratches and bruises on her body and face, fluid buildup in her lungs, cuts on her colon, scars on her head, and nail stigmata, a disorder in which the nails grow into the skin. The evaluation concluded that the subsequent injuries were what started the infection, which grew over time and eventually resulted in sepsis, which was fatal. The autopsy report also verified that Paula had been dead for approximately 24 hours when Andreas brought her to the hospital. The extent of the little girl's injuries, both internal and external, demonstrated the degree of cruelty she had endured and the negligence of her guardians, who had never once taken her to the doctor. In addition, the girl had deficiencies in minerals and nutrients, was underweight, malnourished, and too small for her age. Regarding Paula's wounds, Andrina, the girl's mother, attempted to persuade her family friends that Paula suffers from numerous psychological issues and that her propensity for self-torture is a result of these issues, which Paula used to try to draw attention to herself. The girl's mother claims that after the birth of her younger brother, Paula stopped getting enough attention from her parents, stopped sleeping at night, and tried to control everyone by sobbing. The trial also showed that, despite the board's ruling, Paula was to stay with her uncle in October 2019, but, in reality, she spent more time at her parents' house and spent only a few nights there. As stated differently, the actions implemented by the law enforcement agency did not yield the intended outcome. Consequently, it was possible to prove that the girl started experiencing abuse in 2017, just a few months after Leonardo left Ecuador. That most likely started right after Andrina and Andreas started dating. More than 40 witnesses for the accusing party testified during the trial, confirming that Paula had to suffer abuse for a minimum of 3 years during her brief life. Andrina claimed full responsibility for the child's abuse during the last hearing, just prior to the judge's decision. The woman asserted that she had physically assaulted Paula, sometimes using her fists and a belt. The mother of the girl truly tried to absolve her man of responsibility through this statement. She told him straight out that he had never mistreated Paula and that he was innocent and had nothing to do with it. Andrina added that she had reprimanded her daughter for putting her in conflict with her new spouse. Divorcing her new husband would put her back on the streets and take away the only source of financial security she had with him. Her daughter's care was her lowest priority. The judges expressed concern about the couple's newborn son after learning about Paula's circumstances, but it's safe to assume that this child was never abused, unlike Paula. It is important to note that Andreas has, since his arrest, remained silent about the incident and has exercised his right to do so. By February 3, 2021, Paula's trial was over and the couple had received their sentences. It was decided that both defendants had killed the girl. 13 years is the maximum sentence for this offense. The accusing party and Leonardo's initial attorneys asked for the maximum penalty possible to be meted out to the offenders. However, the chief judge made the decision to consider an aggravating circumstance, namely the fact that Paula was only 4 years old and therefore unable to protect herself from her attackers. Consequently, Andrina and Andreas were given a 17-year and 4-month prison sentence by the judge. The couple was expected to file an appeal right away because of Ecuadorian law, which gives convicted individuals 3 days to challenge the verdict. Andrina did not go to jail. Despite receiving a 17-year and 4-month prison sentence, she continued to live under house arrest. The woman took advantage of her right to appeal, so the higher court must now validate her prison sentence. The woman is still following the initial set of precautions in the interim. This is untrue in the case of Andreas, who was taken into custody when he showed up at the hospital carrying a dead girl. Without a doubt, Andrina's continued freedom is inciting outrage and public indignation. But perhaps most significantly, it is infuriating Leonardo, who fears the woman will use her circumstances to elude punishment. If this story shocked you, remember to subscribe to the channel because there are more equally shocking stories. We, on our part, send our condolences to Paula's father and hope that he will eventually be able to move past his unbearable loss and secure justice for Paula.